Let us take a moment of silence for all the victims of the Holocaust. Thank you and welcome. Before I begin my introduction of our esteemed guest, Dr. Michael Birnbaum, and the topic at hand, I'd like to turn your attention to turning off your cell phones and to the program where you can read about the Center's activities, our mission of expansion. We have some exciting events coming up that I'd like to share with you. March 8th at 4 p.m., we're hosting a Jewish-Muslim lecture by Dr. David Weise entitled Orhan Pamuk and Italo Svevo, Jewish and Muslim Parallels in Culture and Literature. And then for Yom HaShoah on April 19th at 4 p.m., Martha Fraser, the Assistant Director, is organizing a memorial entitled Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, Service and Reflection, the Fate of Teenagers and Young Adults. During the summer between June 25th and 27th, the Center, in collaboration with Isabella Friedman Center, whose director is here, David Weisberg, we've organized an interfaith conference and retreat in Connecticut for young aspiring educators entitled Going Forward, the Future of Religious Literacy, What Should We Teach Our Children About One Another? And in the fall, we are hosting a photographic exhibition entitled Besa, Albanian Muslims Who Saved Jews During the Holocaust by Norman Gershon. It will run from September 1st to December 15th, and we will host a public reception on October 11th. And a new workshop offering by Jeff Kahn, organized by Barbara Reynolds, Assistant Director, entitled Post-Holocaust Reconciliation in Germany, a Model for Transforming Prejudice, is on October 27th. So we have some very exciting and very strong programming throughout up until next spring. So welcome everyone. Welcome to the Holocaust, Genocide, and Interfaith Education Center's Spring Lecture. I'm honored to have here with me my dear friend and mentor, Dr. Michael Birnbaum. Before I share the many accolades and distinctions of this unique man, I want to say a few words about his continual support of my work as a Muslim and the Holocaust. Michael and I met on September 25th, 2003, the day that Edward Said passed away. He was a Palestinian Christian spokesman for Palestinian self-determination, and a historical critic in various disciplines. Michael and I met at Roberto's, an Italian restaurant on Jefferson Boulevard, down the street from Loyola Marymount University, where he and I had made a connection and worked together. I was very sad that day because of Said's death, and in that one day and moment, I had met another friend, intellectual, that I had admired as an undergraduate. That meeting almost 10 years ago has culminated in a mutual trust and faith between him, a Jew, and I, a Muslim. When I was first appointed to this position, Michael texted me and told me to be strong in the face of controversy, and that the path I had taken was going to be a challenge, but a good one. To hear his words and quotes that carried weight in the media and public, especially the Jewish community, held me in a certain esteem that I could not ever imagine. Thank you, Michael. Let me highlight briefly Michael's accomplishments, which you can also read in the brochure. Michael Birnbaum is a writer, lecturer, a teacher, consulting in the conceptual development of museums and the development of historical films. He is director of the Ziggy Ziering Institute, exploring the ethical and religious implications of the Holocaust at the American Jewish University in Los Angeles, where he is also a professor of Jewish studies. In the past, he has served as a Weinstein Gold Distinguished Visiting Professor at Chapman University, the Podlake Distinguished Visitor at Claremont McKenna College, the Ida E. King Distinguished Professor of Holocaust Studies at Richard Stockton's College, and the Stressler family Distinguished Visiting Professor of Holocaust Studies at Clark University. Birnbaum is the author and editor of 20 books, scores of scholarly articles, and hundreds of journalistic pieces. Of his book, After Tragedy and Triumph, Raoul Hilberg said, "All those who want to read only one book about the condition of Jewry in 1990 would do well to choose Michael Birnbaum. In his description of contemporary Jewish thought, he sacrifices neither complexity nor lucidity." Charles Silberman praised The World Must Know as, quote, "a majestic and profoundly moving history of the Holocaust. It is a must-reading for anyone who would like to be human in the post-Holocaust world." The Village Voice praised Anatomy of the Auschwitz Death Camp, with the scholarship broad and deep makes this definitive book on one of our century's defining horrors. His most recent books include Not Your Father's Anti-Semitism, A Promise to Remember, The Holocaust and the Words and Voices of Its Survivors, and After the Passion Has Passed, American Religious Consequences, a collection of essays on Judaism and Christianity, religious tolerance and pluralism, occasioned by that controversy that swirled around Mel Gibson's film, The Passion. Michael is a very special and unique person. He's always garnering support from all communities to make the Holocaust a human story. Last September, he visited Morocco with Peter Geffen, where they held the first Holocaust conference on Muslim soil. And he's also an activist who speaks out for other faiths when he wrote in the Jewish Journal in response to the controversy surrounding Park 51, quote, "Lest we hear a reiteration by Jews of the false claim that Islam is not a religion, permit me to remind Jews that no less a religious authority than Maimonides regarded Islam as a religion. He lived in a Muslim world, read Muslim philosophers, and knew the Quran well, and had significantly fewer theological problems with Islam than he had with Christianity. Witness his 13 principles," end quote. I asked Michael to talk about the topic of commemorating and controversy because I struggle with memory and teaching the Holocaust. My question to him, as he is the expert who has developed and consulted numerous memorials and museums, was simple. How do we commemorate the Holocaust and do it in a way that we don't offend, neglect, ignore, and erect an idolatry that beckons tourism and not education and sentiment of grappling with the Shoah? Architecture is about monuments and graves, said the Viennese architect Adolf Loos at the turn of the 20th century. This meant that an individual human life could be commemorated by a single stone, slab, cross, a star. The simplicity of this idea ended with the Holocaust in Hiroshima and the mechanisms of mass death. Today, an individual can no longer be certain to die an individual death. And architecture can no longer remember life as it once did. The markers that were formerly symbols of individual life and death must be changed. And this has a profound effect on the idea of both memory and the monument. The enormity and horror of the Holocaust are such that any attempt to represent it by traditional means is inevitably inadequate. The memory of the Holocaust can never be nostalgia. In a prescient moment, in The Search of Lost Time, Marcel Proust identifies two different kinds of memory. A nostalgia located in the past, touched with a sentimentality that remembers things not as they were, but as we want to remember them. And a living memory which is active in the present and devoid of nostalgia for remembered past. The Holocaust cannot be remembered in the first, nostalgia mode, as its horror forever ruptured the link between nostalgia and memory. Remembering the Holocaust can therefore only be a living condition in which the past remains active in the present. And now, without further ado, I'll present Dr. Birnbaum.
Thank you very much for an overly kind introduction. I hadn't intended to hear my eulogy. But I want to tell you, given the choice of hearing your eulogy or not hearing your eulogy, it's much better to hear your eulogy than the like. I want to say one thing jokingly that's very serious. There was many years ago I received, and it always marks the way in which I respond when I hear these wonderful introductions. Many years ago I received my first award in the media, and it was called the Silver Angel Award for the best program in religion in the media. And you have a problem when you receive a Silver Angel Award. The question is, who can you tell? I had teenage kids living at home then. Tell them you're an angel, they believe you're the devil incarnate. You can tell your wife, but your wife has two very basic problems. Would you please put the cap on the toothpaste? And would you please remember to put down the toilet, lift up the toilet seat, and then put down the toilet seat? So I did the only honorable thing a man can do under such circumstances, which is I told my mother. And my mother, who was then alive and a wonderful woman and wise, I would say wise beyond her years, but she was then well into the biblical years of her strength, said, okay, you're an angel, now try being a mensch. And everybody should be blessed with such a mother and with such an attitude. Let me say that also I'm pleased to be here. I taught, the one credential that you left out is I taught for 15 years at Georgetown University, which was a Jesuit institution and therefore arguably a Roman Catholic institution, which Roman Catholics fully understand how that's not a humorous statement. So I feel very at home in Manhattan College, and I want to say this, that I also enjoyed the greatest of academic freedom working in Roman Catholic University. They were much nicer to Jews than Jews. And freer to say many different things that I would get into trouble for saying in my own university. I also want to congratulate this university for having the courage to choose a person absolutely on merit, with disregard to the tensions that is in the interreligious world in which we live and the attitude, and having the courage also to withstand the controversy and the discomfort. Because if you want the essence of my speech, and the rest is going to be commentary, that controversy and discomfort is an enormous tool of education. And one has to go right to the center of it in order to absolutely be creative. And this college is in the midst of doing that with a wonderful human being, who is also a fine scholar, who is also growing enormously, and you had the wisdom to have her at the beginning of what will surely be a distinguished career. So the provost is here, some of the department chairmen are here. They already have that in writing. They have done wisely and well. A word about, now I'm going to share with you what are some of the problems that we face on a daily basis as we begin to create museums and as we begin to create things elements that deal with and institutions, whether it be films, books, or works that deal with Holocaust. Just a word about the creation of museums. I had a unique privilege. I was very young when accidentally I was invited to become the deputy director of the President's Commission on the Holocaust. And knowing nothing about museums, I got to do a lot of thinking about museums. I left the project for about 7 years, and they were in the story of Joseph, they were the 7 lean years, and I came back for the 7 productive and fat years, which may or may not have been an accident, but it was fortuitous luck at least. And I had an awful lot of time to do it, and I also had one other great advantage, which is They had chosen lots of people who knew things about museums but didn't know the Holocaust. And after failing and failing and failing and failing and flailing, they decided, let's reverse it, let's choose somebody who knows the Holocaust and who then will learn something about museums. We created a philosophy of museums, and the philosophy of the museum can be told in several ways. The first principle is the place from which you remember an event shapes the way in which you remember it. Place is a geographical location, but place also is a place in time and in space. Now, this is not an alien principle to biblical tradition, because one of the first lines we say is Al Naharot Bavel Shem Yashavnu B'Gam Bachinu B'Zachrenu Et Zion. By the rivers of Babylon we sat and we wept as we remembered Zion. The place from which you remember shapes how you remember. And the idea was that you remember differently in Jerusalem than you would in Warsaw, differently in Auschwitz than you would in Treblinka, differently in Berlin than you would in Budapest, differently in Washington than you would in New York, and different in Los Angeles than you might in Chicago. And place also has a second connotation, which is the place in time you are, how close to the event you are. And part of the very interesting things about place is that place shapes a task. Let me give you a very simple example. Berlin had a long debate over the creation of a Holocaust memorial in Germany. Let me put it in a little bit of an exaggerated fashion, but on a scale of 1 to 10 of exaggeration, this is about 1.5. One was too large and one was too small, one was too powerful and one was not powerful enough. One was too pessimistic and the other was too optimistic. One was too suggestive and the other did not say a lot. They then chose an American Jewish architect by the name of Peter Eisman, who created an incredible collection of sort of slabs of granite coffins that create a maze. And the very interesting thing is that there was a national requirement in Berlin that the capital of Germany, if Berlin was to be the capital of Germany again, it had to confront in a very deep way what it was like when it was the last time the capital of Germany, when it was the capital of Nazi Germany. They couldn't get away with